Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ice Cold Takes podcast. I am your host, Joey DeMeglio, and the Rangers season, unfortunately, has ended in utter disappointment after losing to the Devils in 7 games in round one. Today, I'm joined by Johnluke Chaparro from the Blue Seat blogs to break everything down from how we feel as fans to what needs to happen in the offseason and the decisions that Chris Drury needs to make. Thanks for joining me, John Luke. How's everything going?
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Outside of the Rangers debilitating my emotions for the last couple of days, I'm good. I mean, I watch a terrible baseball team.
Yeah.
Can't imagine which one I root for. But other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, I got you. I feel the exact same way, man. I was not expecting to watch the Mets this early. Last year, it was, middle of June that I turned on SNY again
Mm-hmm.
after watching like the first couple weeks in April.
Yeah.
I was not expecting this. This is such a disappointment.
It's a shock
For
to the system, really, honestly.
hmm
You come back from such a exciting playoff run the year prior, and then it kind of flops this year. You
hmm
kind of feel empty a little bit.
And then you go up 2-0 in this series this year, and I was so damn excited. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was so hyped. Like after that second win, we had like a whole live stream here. Like that was the podcast episode where we were just like, this is our year. This is our year. The Devils are too young. They don't have it. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
completely crapped the bed there. So I have to acknowledge some we call them melted takes. That's one of them. Hand in the air. When I said this is our year, I was completely wrong. It fell flat on its face. After going up 2-0, the Rangers lost 4 of the next 5 to the same team, and it was such a disappointment. It was so bad. I went to game 5 and they got shut out, and then I was thinking about going to game 7. Good thing I did not because they also got shut out. Like that's the other thing. Crazy. 2 shutouts in 3 games.
Honestly, how this is my thing. So I was at game 6. I was at game 3 as well. So the thing that annoys me the most with this team, and I guess we'll touch more on that as we go along. How do you not just throw pucks at the goalie like every other team did against Akira Schmid?
Mhm.
Look at, for example, look at what Carolina did last night. At least to when this is being recorded. The
Mhm.
night prior to this recording, Carolina won game 1. All they did was throw pucks at Akira Schmid, and he got pulled, just like he got pulled in game 6. I don't I, I don't get it. It was a simple concept. You take puck, you shoot puck go in net, on goalie, guy in front. That's it.
Yep.
I don't get it.
I said that this was the most disappointed I've ever felt since 2015, the conference finals, which also even worse, the Rangers got shut out on home ice in games 5 and 7, so twice
Mhm.
in 3 games, sandwiched between 7 goals. So
Yeah.
you take that, and this year it's 2 shutouts in 3 games, sandwiching between a 5-goal performance on home ice. So how does that happen? How do you not stick to the same game plan that won you game 6 or that won you games 1 and 2? Like
Yeah. Well, I think the issue is that, and I guess we'll probably allude to this, or I guess we'll touch on it now, I guess, if that's okay with you.
yeah.
Um, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between the coaching staff, upper management, and the players. Um, it's been known, and this is something that we alluded to on Blue Seat blogs. Gerard Gallant is not an X's and O's kind of guy. He is your personality coach. He is the one who reams everybody in and is supposed to be kind of like the guy who can deal with it, similar to what Vigneault used to do. Except I think Vigneault, he did defer to his assistants, but he was also kind of like a little more hands off than Gallant is. Um, you're playing the same team for at least a week, and you have video, you have footage, you have all of the tools at your disposal, and you still don't make the adjustments. And the thing about Akira Schmid, he's going to be a very good goaltender. Let me just say that. He's big, he's got the tools to do it. Could I be wrong? Kind of hope so. For our sake, at least,
Mhm.
as Ranger fans, because you don't want to get the next birder coming up for us. That's the last thing we need. But Schmid's problem And it was prevalent whenever he would get the puck thrown on him was he had terrible rebound control and his glove was very shaky. That was evident in game 6 when they just threw everything on net and it went in and they brought Vanacek in. So what what is going through these guys' minds that they say, "Oh, let me just stick to what I did the last couple of games because clearly it worked, but it did not." There's a disconnect and it's really hard to kind of pinpoint. Um, During some of the exit interviews, and obviously I'm not saying that it's all the coach's fault. There's a players have to execute. Your top 6 doesn't do a damn thing. They have to come through. That was another big factor. But the players were coming out and not many had a really ringing endorsement of Gallant. And maybe that's just because the emotion's still there. But I mean, it's not really ideal to just kind of have like sort of Jacob Trouba had the biggest like pregnant pause when asked about Gallant when
Mhm.
he spoke, and everyone else kind of followed suit. So, what does that mean for this team going forward?
And if you haven't heard, there have been rumors that were confirmed by Arthur Staple from The Athletic and Elliot Friedman that there was a big altercation, a heated argument after game 4 between management and Gallant, and everybody, like, you could hear it. You could hear it. It wasn't pretty. And I mean, game 4 was arguably the worst game the Rangers played in the series. Um, that was just, it was not good enough at all. They made no adjustments. As much as what Gallant says, we tried making adjustments, is what he said. We tried. It's not like we're not making adjustments. Well, whatever adjustments you tried to make, it obviously wasn't enough because I mean it was the same results. You weren't getting pucks deep. There was one style and one style only that was going to beat how the Devils were playing from games 3 to 7. It was to dump the puck in, get physical, and make them create turnovers.
Yep.
Adapt to that style. Look at how Carolina played in game 1. They were all over the Devils. They went the entire first period only giving up one shot, Carolina. One shot.
Mhm. Yep.
That's how much time they spent in the offensive zone. And the difference between Carolina and the Rangers is that, I mean, well, obviously Brindamore is an awesome coach. I love Brindamore. I think he's a
Mhm.
great coach. They play a style that is a lot different than the Rangers, and they have different tools to accommodate that system. They are a forecheck heavy team. The Rangers were actually pretty balanced this year. They were good from what I remember. From around February, early March, the Rangers were top 5 in both forecheck and rush offense. So you take your pick there. But Carolina has the tools necessary to fit that style. And we were talking before the show about the identity that the Rangers had, and that it seemed like it was missing in this series. I don't like to point the finger at individual players because it's a team sport, and you lose together or you win together, right? And saying like, "Oh, Patrick Kane did nothing," which, by the way, I don't think he did. I don't think he did nothing. He had 6 points in 7 games on like a busted hit. We know that now. Um, Panarin didn't have the best series. Zibanejad didn't have the best series. I mean, the only guys really. It's crazy that like the first 2 games, nobody was complaining. Like everybody was saying, I have no complaints. Everybody, there's no weak link on this roster. Then after, it's like everybody's the weak link. It just completely flip flopped like that. And the line Python here, my guy Python was saying like Gallant doesn't realize the blender isn't an adjustment. It's not an adjustment. Like when I went to game 5, at some point Kakko was the best skater on the Rangers in game 5. Clear as
Mhm.
day. He was
Yep.
he was the only one that had chances. He was the only one that was making good plays and stuff. He had some great opportunities that he couldn't finish, but he rightfully promoted him to the first line. But that alone doesn't, you know, change the outcome of the game.
Right.
You need to like say, all right, stop going side to side with the passes. Go forward. You know?
Mhm. Right. And one of the issues that we alluded to this on Blue Seat Blogs when we recorded yesterday, is that Gallant made a comment. First of all, on the identity aspect. So, like you said, when you discuss Carolina, they're a big, heavy, forecheck, defensive-oriented team that grinds it out and forces you to make mistakes. And they throw pucks on net. Like it's the most typical, the stereotypical hockey trope. Get pucks in deep, throw it on net, but it works. And they have the ability and the personnel to do it. Like Sebastian Aho complements, Svechnikov well, complements Teravainen well, complements, then you got like a guy like
Jordan
Derek
Staal.
Stepan, Jordan Staal, Jordan Martinook. They're built for that system. The Rangers this year were kind of in the middle between trying to be this big offensive team that moves on the rush, but then also forecheck well, which you can do. But what Gallant's issue was, and Python mentioned that, line blenders are not an adjustment. If you look at the way the lines were constructed, analytically speaking, the best lines the Rangers had were the combinations they had before the game against Detroit in November. And they threw out Zibanejad, Kreider, Kakko, Lafreniere, Trocheck, and Panarin. Okay. Then you have Hedel. And then there was a bunch of other people that
Hunt was still on the team.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember who else was. They had so many different people on the fourth line.
Yeah, that's oh man.
Yeah,
so I can't even remember that, man. I think Goudreau was playing third line minutes.
Right. I think Goudreau. It was Goudreau,
Hedel,
VC. That was the fourth line. Then you had Reeves. My gosh, who was the fourth line?
Carpenter.
Ryan Carpenter. That's right. I keep forgetting about him. Ryan Carpenter, and then it was kind of like a mix between Julien Gauthier, let's just say.
Yep.
So, but the point is that Gallant made a comment after one of the games. I can't remember if it was game 7 or the game 4 or game 5 loss. And he basically said, I think it was after game 7, talent can only get you so far, but I need forecheckers. Well, geez, Gerard, I don't know. Maybe put your best forecheckers to complement your talent. Kaapo Kakko is one of the best, board players on this team and can be one of the best in the league. That's what he's good at. That's what he's known for. That's what he was drafted to be, is that guy who has that skill, who can go down low, similar to what Jaromir Jagr used to play when he was here. Say what you want about Alexis Lafreniere. Did absolutely nothing. You can say what you want about him being a bust. I'm on the fence with him, but the talent is still there. It doesn't go away. What is the one thing that he's good at? Is getting the puck down low and moving it around. So you put him with a guy like Trocheck and Panarin, he can be a distributor. Why not? They were good at the beginning of the season. So then what you could have done too is you could have thrown Patrick Kane on the third line and kind of had him as kind of like this roving bottom 6 player who still has the talent, because that's another thing too that is kind of annoying. Gallant didn't properly utilize the assets that he had. So, for example, I'll use another old example, and I might trigger some people with this. When the Rangers traded for Eric Stahl, what did AV do? He put him on the third line. Why? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, Keith Yandel. Keith Yandel gets buried on the third pair.
Man,
why?
That one bothers me so much. I always talk about that on my show.
Right.
The Yandel one.
Yeah. And I love Keith Yandel. I have a Keith Yandel jersey, Sonk, all that. I love Keith. I thought he was great here. I wanted them to keep him. Obviously, it was too much money. That's fine. But if you would have put Patrick Kane on a third line with Hedel and another winger, and then you put Lafreniere with Trocheck and Panarin, Kakko plays with Kreider and Zibanejad, you have that balance. But he doesn't do that. Gallant is very stubborn in that regard. So that's how you lose games. You don't know how to utilize your assets properly.
That's a great point. Like going back to the very beginning, the first 15. Rob Luker talks about it all the time on
Luker.
Twitter.
Love Luker.
Yeah, that last game against Detroit was when things started going south. The Rangers couldn't hold leads. They were blowing 2-0 leads and stuff like that against teams they shouldn't be losing to. They
Edmonton.
I know, man. But hey, the Rangers got their revenge.
They did.
They got their revenge.
Yep, that was a fun game. Yep, that's right.
That was an amazing game.
The highlight reel's on my YouTube channel. So
yeah, that was one of the high points of the season for me. I love that game was when I said to myself, this team is special, and that's when I made the internal which is wrong now at the time, right now. But at the time, I thought it was going to be right. I thought this was going to be the year. How foolish of me! But
Yeah, same here.
I mean, getting back to my point, the lines at the very beginning of the season, it's been so long. Like I completely forgot that that was the thing.
Hmm.
They started opening night with Kreider, Zibanejad, Kako against Tampa Bay, and then the second line was Panarin, Trocheck, and Kravtsov.
That's right.
Kravtsov,
Forgot about him. That's right.
yeah, and that's another one. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was one of his biggest defenders. I wanted him to get more playing time, but it didn't work out for him. So I
No.
mean, people said that I was an idiot or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, fine, fine. I was wrong. He didn't work out. He's in Vancouver, and apparently he was getting healthy scratch and stuff. So it didn't work out.
Well, the
Anyway,
thing about to touch on Kratzoff real quick, and
go ahead.
I was one of the few people when he was drafted that actually liked the pick because if there was one thing at the time, a lot of people don't seem to remember how this organization lacked high end skill. The Rangers up until at least before the letter, and I give credit to Statboy Steven, who I worked with for a bit, made a good point in saying that the Rangers used to draft guys that were kind of like already at the peak. So they had an already established game style, but they couldn't really be molded. You got your JT Miller, your Carl Hagelins and all that, very similar style players that are good, but not players that can help you get over the hump with that elite skill. Everybody wanted Oliver Wahlstrom at the time, and rightly so. The dude could shoot the puck. I wanted him to at one point, but you look at Kravtsov and the skill that he still has, because I am a firm believer that that just doesn't evaporate. Um, it was something that we hadn't seen in a while, and then the following year, they get they get I'm having trouble
So
remembering, but it was
2018
around the same time. They get Kratzoff one year, and I think the year prior they got like Hedel and
and
Anderson
Anderson.
around that same time.
Yep.
But with him, his issue was conditioning. That was the problem. Conditioning and the lack of wanting to adapt to the North American game. Does anyone really want to go to Hartford, Connecticut? And I'm not trying to diss anyone from Hartford, Connecticut here. It's not really an ideal city for many things. I've been to Hartford. It's not terrible, but it's like every other northeastern city. It gets cold. There's not really much to do.
Hmm.
Again, Hartford, you're a great city. You know, want the Whalers back. but like you're talking about a kid who is making bank in Russia, who is kind of spoiled at some points in his life, which is fine. He grew up differently than a lot of us. To go from that to getting everything you want in Russia to going to Hartford and making less than what, or just about what a New York City cop makes at the start of his tenure, you know, it's kind of jarring for a kid like that. And then you're coming from Russia and this and that and the fourth and not really knowing the language. So understandably, you can see why it kind of didn't work. But then also, he was also his own destructor as well, not wanting to kind of take his
Hmm.
lumps. And I'm not one of those old school guys that's like, he needs to work and take his lumps, then he has to suck it up. Like, no, I mean, to a reasonable degree, you have to put some work
Like,
in
you
because,
understand why he's doing that. Yeah,
right,
like, the pay is significantly different. Hockey Stat Miner was talking about it at some point that it's, like, what he would be making in the KHL versus what he would be making in the AHL
right.
when he was sent down 2 years ago now
Hmm.
at the beginning. Like, that's a big deal, but
Yeah,
if you,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
really, really want it, like, think about, like, what Zuccarello did. Like,
Hmm.
Zuccarello came to North America, and he had guys in front of him that probably shouldn't have been playing at all. I don't know why it took so long for the Rangers to finally decide that he needed to be on the roster. You got like Asham and Pyatt and those
Ben
guys.
Ferrio.
Ben Ferrio. Oh, yeah, my
I
gosh,
remember
man.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. But like Zuccarello made the decision to ride it out. But that was the kind of guy he was.
right.
But with Kravtsov, it's a little different.
Hmm.
But I mean, to get back to what I was saying about the line combinations, I think you're right with like the first 15 games, the Rangers had it figured out. So when Kravtsov went down with the injury, Gallant immediately threw Lafreniere back up there for that Minnesota game. They dominated that game.
Seven
That
two.
was one of the most well played offensive games I've ever seen the Rangers play. It
Hmm.
was so exciting. Like chances galore. Kako was killing it. Lafreniere was making great passes to Panarin. And believe it or not, Lafreniere, we always say that he is a natural left winger. He doesn't look comfortable on the right side. I had not seen him look that comfortable on the right side at all. Like that was the most comfortable I had ever seen him on the right
Right.
side. He like it was just he didn't miss a beat at all.
Hmm.
He set up Panarin. I think he had 2 assists in that game,
Yep.
and one was in the first period. I remember that. It was a nice little pass to Panarin, who got into the middle of the ice, which is one of the
Hmm.
things that he's gotten away from in the
Yep.
past couple of years. He got to the middle of the ice, and Lafreniere sends him a pass, perfect, right on the stick, and Panarin snipes it, and
Hmm.
it's 3-0 Rangers. But like
Yep.
that right there, when the puck stopped going in, those 15 games, they had all the chances in the world, all the puck possession time ever. I was still a believer that the Rangers would turn it around. Everybody's saying like, "Oh no, they're not good enough. They're not good enough," and I'm like, "No, they are. They're just it's like they're not getting the puck the right bounces and stuff."
Hmm.
And
Right.
I think what it comes down to with the management or like Gallant is you got to have results, and the fact that they weren't getting results figured, like they wanted to change stuff up. And I guess their idea of adjustments is, mixing the lines up and not playing a different style. I don't know.
Right. And the issue with that kind of attitude, and obviously coaches are going to make adjustments. That's understandable. If your team is going through a really bad rut, you kind of want to switch things up at some point. But the Rangers, and especially now with the NHL becoming really analytically heavy, analytically laden, so to speak, um, you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page in the sense of understanding the similarities and using both the eye test, the personality test, and the analytics to make informed decisions. And that's important, of course. Now I'm in the boat where I like to look at analytics because they do tell a part of the story, but also I like to meld it with kind of the eye test. Like I'll say, for example, and this will also be a name that's also triggering to many Ranger fans. He's only been here for a little bit, but let's look at a guy like Jake Leschyshyn, for example. This guy has some of the worst analytics you could possibly think of, and the guy can't score to save his life. Guy's a wonderful scorer in the AHL, funny enough. But you look at him play on the ice, and there's one thing that he's decent at is standing in the middle of the ice, playing defense as a center. So if you had somebody who could maybe score a bit on the fourth line, you can get away with having Leschyshyn there, but the Rangers didn't have that, so there was kind of no need for the guy. So, and another thing that I want to touch on too is, and you talk about Panarin getting away from the middle of the ice, you know, that also comes from the coaches not doing their job in the sense of not getting the best out of your player. Tell me why David Quinn, who has a completely sort of different system than Gallant did. John Tortorella, same thing, different type of system. They were able to get the best out of him. Now Gallant comes in, who is a little bit more offensive, so to speak, and is kind of a player's coach. The guy, I mean, granted, he had 90 something points this year, so it's not like he's a total bum. But Panarin looks so much better in the. That's why the Rangers got Panarin in the first place. That performance against Tampa, that first round was insane.
Oh,
That
when he was
just
on Columbus.
Yeah, when he was on Columbus with
Yeah.
Tortorella, that just doesn't vanish. What happened? What is going on? So I
Right.
just mentioned because you brought Panarin up. So
Yeah, like that's a good point. You bring up Panarin with like Tortorella and David Quinn. Like I've seen the charts. Panarin under David Quinn versus what he is with Gallant is it's vastly different. He's still good.
oh
Like,
yeah,
don't get me wrong, he's still got all the tools and stuff, but Panarin was dominant with David Quinn. It was like every time he was out there, you expected something to happen.
right.
Now it's like he turns the puck over a lot and he kind of shies away from the middle of the ice. You would always, always, always see Panarin come down the left wing and then like skate all the way to the right side of the ice and rip a shot on the goalie. Now
Mhm.
he'll go to the left side, which is towards the boards, and then like peel off and then pass it to a defenseman instead of go to the middle of the ice. I don't know if he's dealing with like an injury or something, but he's also turning over the puck a lot, and
The
he did
mental.
acknowledge that yesterday too. And it seems like it's a mental thing too. I mean, it's a lot that you're going through. You don't have a lot of space to work with. The Devils certainly did a great job. I'm not saying the Devils did nothing and that Panarin sucks. I'm not saying that. I think the Devils did a great job of, taking away the passing lanes. They clogged everything. They played like all their skaters back, right?
Mhm.
So you have to get it past them. That's not how Panarin plays.
Nope, not at all whatsoever. And you know, you want to sit back and look at what went wrong, and then my thing is, what do you do going forward? Now, I saw some takes on Twitter, which is my first mistake. There were people were basically alluding to the fact that this team is cooked. First of all, uh, this team doesn't need a rebuild. They don't. They need a more of a, like a retool kind of thing. A rebuild is what they did to basically tear everything down, trade everybody away. But you're still talking about having one of the best goaltenders in the world. You still have a very, very competent number one center in Mika Zibanejad. For his playoff shortfalls, Artemi Panarin, you have to get to the playoffs first.
Yes,
Artemi Panarin is still a
absolutely.
very good regular season player, and I'm in the firm belief that he can be a playoff performer if everything goes right. He needs a distributor more than anything. The defensive core, they're still going to be very good. Keandre Miller kind of had a step back in progression this
Yeah.
season. He wasn't very good on many occasions. Some people say that was Trouba being injured for the first part of the season, but what happened when Trouba basically healed up and performed was probably, I'll say this, Adam Fox. I love Foxy. I do. And his numbers say that he had a very good year, but he had a lot of games off, so to speak,
Mhm.
defensively. And that kind of showed in game 7 when he turned it over basically by getting muscled off the puck
That
for
was so
some
shocking.
for some
I did That
reason.
was the last thing I expected, a
Right.
turnover from Fox leading to the
Exactly.
game-winning goal in game 7. That was did not have that on the bingo card.
Right. So, obviously that's an anomaly, so we know Fox is going to be good. So this team, and then you got Braden Schneider, baby Truba, Miller has immense talent. Um, you have, Trouba's still going to be here, still a very good defenseman in his own right. He's a good leader. His teammates love him, you know. Um, so there's still a lot of holes that you can plug in that this team can still be very good. It's just what it is that the players not only need to buy into the system, because that was the big thing is the players didn't perform. The players have to buy into the system. The players have to understand the system. There's no identity now. They have to have a system, buy into it, and stick with it. You get guys who can supplement that. I'll say this is the first time I'm going to say this publicly, and I'm going to make this a post on Blue Sea Blogs. And I know people are going to kill me. I know this is live. Please don't flood my mentions. There is a guy that I'm thinking of that would be perfect for this team. He has playoff experience. He has a Stanley Cup win. Not exactly the most favored player in the league, but why not? You go out and you get a guy like Corey Perry. And the reason why I say this, you can slot him anywhere on this team. You could put him fourth line, he'll perform. You put him on the third line, he'll score. He for some reason, Corey Perry is on these teams and they just do well. Maybe it's a testament to him. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of the guy in terms of his play style. He's very dirty, but
Now he's dirty.
yeah, but you a guy like that would have been perfect for Rangers Devils. Oh my gosh. Not that I'm saying that I want him to go out and to just like injure people. That's not my mantra. I don't like that. I hate when players do that where they purposely intentionally do that. But what could he have done that was any worse than Lafreniere or Panarin? Maybe he's the jolt that they need. Someone alluded, I'm trying to remember
He'd
where I
be
read this
cheap
from.
too.
Oh, 100%, and that's perfect with the cap crunch that the Rangers are going through right
He'd be
now.
cheap. I'd rather have Perry than Will Cooley because we don't know what we're gonna get with Will Cooley
Right.
just
Well,
yet.
I'll I'll mention him in a second because I actually do like him a lot. But when it comes to the cap crunch and getting a player like that, the Rangers leadership outside of Jacob Trouba, you have Panarin, Zibanejad, Goodrow, um, and who else am I missing? It's Trouba, Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider,
Right.
that group, they're not, like rah sort of, they're more of lead by example kind of guys. And that's good. You need that. But what this team lacked was kind of like a guy who can get everybody riled up, which is why, even though he was kind of a net negative on the
Yeah,
ice,
Reed.
Ryan Reeves, I mean, we had MSG running out, Shesty release us, and Reeves was on the Instagram almost every other day.
Uh-huh.
The players gravitated to him. He was a good buffer for Gallant. He leaves. It's not a coincidence that everything is kind of off. You need a guy like that. Could Corey Perry be that kind of guy on the ice at least? Sure. You need it. Why wouldn't I not want to have Corey Perry give crap to freaking, uh, Timo Meyer?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Yeah. Yeah.
like really. So that would be a good move. And then you got guys like Lindgren, you got guys like Schneider, you got guys like Goodrow who are, they're tough, but they're not like, completely like grinder kind of guys. You know what I mean? Corey Perry would be good at that. And I fully expect I kind of expect some people to come at me after that, but
I
why
don't
not?
think that's a bad idea, actually. The only thing I'm concerned about is his age. Like, I mean, he's looked fine when he's been with Tampa. Uh, it's always like when older guys go to my teams, it's like they get really bad. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I know. No, trust me, I get it.
That's
But
like the one thing I'm concerned about. But I get what you're saying about like he's the guy that gets under your skin. Don't forget, like Corey Perry was once one of the top goal scorers in the league. The 50 goal scorer,
mm-hmm,
Maurice Richard winner. You said he won a Stanley Cup. He's like he's transformed himself into a completely different player. He's
right.
like Sean Avery,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And
Like a Sean Avery. You know what I mean?
right.
Not exactly like that, but someone that's gonna get under your skin, always around the front of the net, doing stuff like that. Get into the dirty areas that not really everybody wants to do
Right. Now the
during the
thing
regular season, at least.
right, and to add to that, to kind of talk about Cooley and Othman, I loved what I saw in Will Cooley, by the way. Very raw still. But if you notice a lot of the guys that Drury has drafted since he took over, one of the big things, and this is why they brought Reeves here in the first place. I was at the game in 21 when Tom Wilson run amok and basically bashed Artemi Panarin's head into the ground. There was an ever sense of, God bless Brendan Smith, Kevin Rooney. I will
Yeah.
always appreciate those guys till the end of time because those guys were heart and soul guys, regardless of their play. But they never had that identity. They're a very skilled team, very passive team. You get a guy like Reeves, change things up a little bit. Get a guy like Goodrow, immediately changes the makeup of the team. Okay, so that's what you want. You want to have a mix between of grit and skill. Went away for that a little bit. There you go. Yeah, Perry had 5 points this postseason too, so that works out. So if you look at who the Rangers ended up picking up after when I think it was Drury's first draft, Brennan Othman,
Mm-hmm.
Adam Sikora. They traded Lias Anderson and they got the pick
Will
that they got
Cooley.
from LA for Will Cooley. What is the one thing that all those guys are good at? They're
Those are-
all tough
Yep.
grinder guys. Othman is the one that has the more skill out of all of them. But they compared Adam Sikora to kind of like a
Brian Callahan?
Slovakian Brad Marchand.
Okay. I've
With
heard Ryden Callahan, but I
yeah,
mean Brad
hey,
Marchand's
listen,
crazy too.
hey, I'll take it. So you begin to infuse that with what they have right now. Corey Perry's a good segue to that. Just like Ryan Reeves is a good segue to other talent on this team, and same for like Trouba, for Schneider, and all that. And I think in the future, if they manage their assets properly, I think they'll be okay,
Like
especially in that crit part.
I was talking with I don't know if we talked about it before the show or if it was just me talking to somebody else, but the idea of Panarin and his line mate, you said he needed a distributor. He works better for some reason. He works better. He's more comfortable when he's got like the Blackwells, the Stroms, Jesper
Jesper
Fast.
Fast. Yep.
So like Corey Perry, I don't think that's a bad idea. That wouldn't even be a bad idea. You put like, listen, if you put Perry and Panarin together, like maybe Perry starts to be like, oh, I know how to. I remember how I used to play. Like, maybe pops a couple goals here and
Yeah, it
there.
gets you 25 at the age of like 40. That'd be pretty good.
That would be nuts. But I mean, there's other guys I've been looking at in free agency. Like I know last year a lot of fans were saying Evan Rodriguez because he's a great analytical player. Like he had a good season for Colorado this year. Like they gave him a lot of ice time.
Yeah, they did.
He averaged 17 minutes, but they did have some injuries, so
He
that's
was on a
probably
line
what.
with McKinnon for some time.
Okay,
So,
yeah, he
I
had like
mean,
43 points. So.
that's you basically just have to show up and you'll
No, but
score.
he was good with Pittsburgh. I remember him
Yeah,
in
he
that
was.
playoff series. He was great. He was
Mhm.
really, really good. He was able to do everything. Power
Yep.
play, penalty kill, even
Mhm.
strength. He was good at all of it.
Yep.
He was one. Actually, this surprised me. Garnet Hathaway's like
Yep.
even 5v5 analytics on natural stat trick are very, very
Mhm.
good. Very good. Like over 50% in like almost everything.
Mhm.
Um, and he's a guy that body checks. So I
Yep.
mean, the guys that say you need more sandpaper in this lineup, why not get a guy like him?
Right.
And I don't know how much he would cost. The salary cap space is going to be very, very tight. Like you're going to have to move. Like you're not going to be able to keep Tarasenko and Kane unless Kane is like taking a league minimum contract like Giordano did. Then I don't think
I don't
Kane
think
is
he
going
comes back. I made this prediction and I even said this in a Patrick Kane jersey. I think he goes to Buffalo.
Yeah.
I was in, so I did this trip at the end of March, where I went to the Devils game and then I flew out to Buffalo because I have a buddy that lives out there, and I went to go see the Rangers and the Sabres. It's kind of like my yearly pilgrimage to go see them and see my friend too. And we're at the game, and obviously I'm annoyed because I know the Rangers can beat these guys easy, but they were basically Devin Levi was killing it.
Oh yeah. He's looked
That was
good.
actually his debut. That's right. I just remembered that. So I'm with my friend there, and I said, I'm going to tell you something right now. I said, you guys to the Buffalo Sabres, like you guys are going to be really good next year. And I said, you want to know who's going to be your guy? Patrick Kane. How much better could it be for him at least to go home, sign on a team friendly deal? They have a lot of cap space, mind you, and basically elevate them to make a nice playoff run. They have the talent to do it.
It
As
would have been
far
a great spot for Timo Meyer, man.
Oh yeah,
Their cap situation is so wide
I kind
open.
of
Like
wish it happened. Maybe it happens in the offseason. Get him away from the Devils. I might actually
oh
like the
my god,
guy.
that would be great.
You
That'd
know,
be great.
for the record, I've hated Timo Meyer since he was a Shark. I'm just saying. So my hatred for him was was there before he became a Devil. But what was it? Yeah. So Tarasenko, it, something tells me he comes back.
I
But
would
if
love that, man. I would
yeah,
I would I think that would be great. Like as much as you brought up like the old line combinations and that would be great. Those
hmm
would be awesome. But like you add Tarasenko to the mix here and you automatically have like a 30 goal scorer. You have one of the
yeah,
best
there you
shooters in
go.
the game. The
hmm
Rangers do not have a shooter. They don't have it. That was one of the things that we were looking at the trade deadline. Everyone is saying like using the hindsight bias or whatever it's called is like, oh, the Rangers should have added grit at the more sandpaper, more guys like Cop and Vetrano at the deadline this year. Go back and look and see what was our lineup. We had VZ and Goudreau in the top six. You
hmm
can't survive like
Nope.
that. They needed two wingers and they needed a shooter. That's exactly what they needed. They needed
Right.
Tarasenko, and they got that. And then when it became clear that Patrick Kane wanted to play for the Rangers and only the Rangers, and that the cost was peanuts, how could you say no to that? Like I
You
don't
have to
blame
do it. You have
I
to.
can't blame Chris Drury for that. This is not on him. This cannot be on Chris Drury. Who wouldn't take a Patrick Kane for like pennies on the dollar,
Oh, you have to make that trade,
right?
especially with how easy it was. And I think I heard that Drury didn't want Kane initially. He didn't. He didn't.
No, yeah,
That's
yeah,
why he
because of the
traded
hip.
Tarasenko. And obviously there's long-term concerns. And I know what I kind of see what Drury's trying to do with the team moving forward. it's trying to establish a base that has that mix of skill and grit, and that's one of the reasons why they got Tarasenko. Granted, whether it's a rental or you know short term, but either way, um, and they were still flying when they got Tarasenko. I mean, I was at the first game that he played against the Kraken. I mean, that's probably that was just about as loud as a playoff game that night. But then you get a guy like Kane, and obviously you can't say no. It's one of those basically unavoidable. Jim Dolan is going to say, "Oh, you're going to get this guy that's won Stanley Cups for the Blackhawks. You make it work." That's what happened. So, but the thing is that you talk about not getting a shooter. Um, Patrick Kane was supposed to be that because that's basically what his bread and butter is outside of stick handling. Very good shot, very hard shot. It's very precise too. Like I think we saw it in action when he scored his first as a Ranger in Montreal. That thing is a
Yeah, it was.
bullet.
Yeah, that was
Why
a
he didn't
beautiful shot.
exercise that more, I have no idea. But you look at the team from last season, they actually did acquire a shooter, and that was Frank Vetrano.
For Toronto.
What did he do with Mika and Kreider? He shot the puck. That's why that line was so good. I kind of wish we would have kind of bring him back on a discount, but Anaheim gave him more money
It's
than
a
he would
lot of
say no
money,
to.
man.
You know, same thing with Cop. You know, he wanted to go home to Detroit. All right, adios. You know, I would have liked to have kept one of those guys, and I think they would have had some better results. Vetrano was the one I wanted to keep because he works so well with Kreider and Mika. Like I was, for some reason, they could never. Those two can't find a line mate after Buchnevich. I don't know what it is.
First,
And then
yeah.
Tarasenko comes in. Okay, that works. But then, oh well, Gallant wants to change things. Let's throw him with Panarin. And it's like, and then that line does well too. So yeah,
It's also weird too because like, all right, Tarasenko, you put him with Kreider's advantage ad. Then you have Panarin Trocheck, right? Or Panarin Hedel. You can't put you have to put both kids in the top 6 next year, I think.
you
Like
have to. Yep.
I almost feel like Kreider should be like linked to Trocheck and because those guys play a north-south style of play. I
Mm-hmm.
talked to Drew Way a lot too, and he
Good
always
guy.
says like you have to match like the analytics are good, but you have to match the play styles.
Yep.
You have to match the play styles. Like Kreider's advantage ad, I mean, it's worked, but when you don't have Buchnevich, it's not the same,
Right.
right? So if you do like Lafreniere's advantage at Tarasenko or uh, I don't even know like Panarin Trocheck Lafreniere like we did earlier in the season. Or I know he doesn't like Kako on his wing, but Panarin Trocheck Kako.
You know what, Panarin? Deal with it.
Yeah, no, right,
Yeah,
right. Like
life's tough. Deal with it.
I've always said I like Kako with Panarin. I don't know why.
Well,
There's
they
like
did reasonably well when Ryan Strome was their center, and
yeah,
they had Kako on that power play unit. He scored a couple of pretty good power play goals. I don't understand why Kako was not on a power play unit. I mean, he was on the last 2 games of that series, but for the majority of the season, even when they got Tarasenko, they put Lafreniere over Kako, and that kind of mystified me a little
they
bit.
they gotta throw him in on power play one because they have they had like 4 right-handed they always do this where they have 4 right-handed shots. Like it was
Always.
I don't even know where you would put him. Where you'd put Kako. Like
Just have
because his
have him on the
spot
right side, pretty
when
much.
he was in like playing for Finland, right? And TPS, his spot was the right dot, that area. But you have Panarin and Zibanejad's one-timer is so lethal. Like, what are you gonna do?
Right.
It's like too many options there. It's almost like you should split up. You should have power play one is Zibanejad in the left dot, and power play two is Panarin in the left dot.
Well, they did that and they went away from it. I don't know why they went away from that. They did it for a couple of games, and I thought this was some of my colleagues at Blue Sea Blogs disagree with me, but
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll address this
yeah.
comment.
So why did we go away from? Oh, because they got suffocated by the Hurricanes. Like, come on, give me a break. So
Like, if you go away from it, then just come back to it. You know.
right, surprised they didn't make that change
Yeah.
in the playoffs.
Th-
It's
What
ridiculous.
Python is saying here is exactly how I feel. Like they should move Trocheck
Yes.
down to the third line. I think they
Hmm.
should move Cheadle down to the top, or Cheadle up to the top 6 too, and move Trocheck down to the third line to make that third line a shutdown or matchup style line. Like,
Right.
listen, I know people will harp on like, well, they're not going to get their ice time. BS. They're going to kill some penalties.
Come on.
Somebody's going to take penalties. The
Mm-hmm.
defenseman, one of the fourth liners, somebody's going to be taking penalties, and Trocheck and Kreider are your penalty killers. Those guys get their penalty killing time. Kako, Lafreniere get their power play time. I think that's fair. And if you roll all the lines, we've seen it this year. They did it. If you roll all the lines, get a good rhythm going, everybody could get 10 minutes at
Mm-hmm.
least.
Yeah.
So, and
And
they can all be effective that way.
right. And the thing is that you look at the thing that annoys me too again with Panarin, and this relates to that, is he's made it vocal that he doesn't want to play with Heedle and Kako and some of the kids. But the funny part is he's had some of his best moments with the kids. Like who was the one that scored the overtime winner against the Devils in December? Philip Heedle. Who passed it to him? Artemi Panarin.
And also in that first game of that series of like the first regular season matchup, Rangers Devils, the Rangers are kind of going through it, and Glenn tried this he was doing his thing where he blends up the lines, and he landed on Panarin, Heedle, Kako.
They were great.
Their first shift together was a goal from
Yep.
I think it was Heedle.
I was at that game. Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I never understood why they never even tried it. So, but
Yeah,
what do I know?
I don't know. The rumors too of like Gallant, it's interesting. I'm impartial to Joel Quenneville.
Oof.
Here's where I take. I'm not gonna say like my opinion on it, but I will say, uh, James Dolan, he does not care.
No.
He will take whatever it will to get him to win, because that's what generates the revenue and gets the Rangers further. I am sure he is not pleased with the first round exit. Look at Toronto.
Yep.
They finally made it past the first round. You know how crazy their fans are? They sell out every game. They're one of the biggest markets in the league. They're going to be raking in all that money. Like, this is a huge missed opportunity considering Boston, Colorado, Tampa Bay, all the juggernauts are out. The Rangers could have easily made it to the conference finals, and they didn't.
Right.
So I could understand why James Dolan would want Drury to make a move like that. But I do think that Drury would rather not do that.
Right.
I think he would. I hope they would think outside the box here. And again, like I'm not really on board with having Mark Messier as a coach because he's never coached before.
No chance.
But like,
no,
I don't know. You got to change something up there. You cannot just bring the same exact roster back this year, because the way they ended this season was not. It was not right. It wasn't good.
That it was a missed opportunity. You had too much talent and it wasn't utilized properly. Now I'll say this: if this was a perfect world and none of that would happen in Chicago, and we alluded to this on the podcast for Blue Sea Blogs, if this was a perfect world where none of this happened, where the Kyle Beach situation didn't go through, we would be chomping at the bit to hire Joel Quenneville. Me personally, as a hockey fan, I would say yes. But I'm also a human being. And the thing that I won't accept is to now I don't know whether he's atoned to it, to the situation, whether he's he's made amends or whatever. I can't speak to that. But what I would not and what I wouldn't like to see is bringing in a guy who was willingly complicit in hiding a situation that was very sensitive and very harmful in the guise of trying to win. And to me personally, I don't like that. That puts a lot of his integrity and character into question. Now, I'm not a perfect person myself, but there's one thing I've never done is I've never hidden something so egregious to the point where I sacrificed it for something else, to the point where we basically ruin someone's life. Now, I'm not one to judge. In terms of other candidates,
Limited.
It really is, because you basically have it boiled down to Daryl Sutter, Peter Laviolette, And maybe a guy like Andrew Burnett, or maybe an assistant coach from somewhere who is very X's and O's and can really command that. My personal choice, my personal choice for this team is Mike Sullivan. Why
I
does
mean, yeah, yeah. It's
Why,
like,
right? Why did they not hire him after they fired Tortorella is still beyond me to this day. Maybe it's because the association, you want to clean house completely, but Mike Sullivan is perfect for this team. He has a cup pedigree. Players respect him outside of like Phil Kessel, of course.
oh, I didn't know about Phil Kessel.
Well,
Who?
that's more jokingly than anything because Phil Kessel complains about everybody. But but he's got the pedigree. He knows the people here. He knows Chris Drury from at least Team USA. He knows James Dolan. He
Yeah,
knows
he was
Glenn
his coach. He
Sather.
played here. Like
Right.
Jury was playing here the same time Torts and Sullivan were coaching.
Right, exactly. So there's a familiarity to that. So the only way that could probably happen in this moment is if they were to trade for him. If I'm correct, you'd have to give a draft pick and some compensation for his services, which I don't think they would do. So
Nah, they
that's kind of
wouldn't take anything from the Rangers.
right. So it's kind of like up in the air. So that leaves you with, if you end up having to fire Gallant, it basically leaves you with two choices. They're not going to go to Peter Laviolette because he is known to suck the life out of the offense on his teams. And that's the last thing this team needs.
nah, I
Daryl
don't. Yeah, not
Daryl
part of.
Sutter, Daryl Sutter, as big of a jerk as he is, has arguably some of the best teams over the last over the last maybe 10 or so years with the Kings and even the Flames. They have some of the best 5-on-5 numbers out there. Maybe this team needs a kick in the butt like they did when they fired Rennie and hired Tortorella. And look, they ended up, going to a conference final with Torts. Maybe that's what this team needs. Am I 100% on the Daryl Sutter train? No, because I think he's kind of a dinosaur.
Yeah,
But do you risk bringing Gallant back and not making any changes and kind of beginning the season stagnant, depending on how they make the team up for next year? Or do you want to make a fresh change and allow this team to have a different identity going forward and utilizing your talents that you have properly to make up some of the shortcomings that you have, even strength? What do you do? Daryl Sutter's that guy.
it's like, yeah, I would love Sullivan. Sutter. I don't know what it is. Like, is the somebody on your show I think was tweeting about how the LA Kings were some of the best teams.
Yeah, that
And
was
I
Rob.
actually went back last night. I
Yeah.
was looking to see like um it was either last night or the night before. I was looking to see, you know, which teams were like the best like analytics wise from like 2013 to like 2015 because natural stat trick allows you to go like
Mm-hmm.
3 years.
Right.
And the top of those teams, the top of the league, it was LA and Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Right.
Every
Yep.
stat, everything was well over 50%. It was
Mm-hmm.
like they were so far away the best teams that it was not even close. But like
Right.
those teams, Daryl Sutter, Joe Quenneville teams, like I know it's weird with Sutter because he's so bland, and I mean he had a great goalie.
Yep.
Markstrom was great, but I mean look at what happened to him. I don't know what happened this year for the Flames.
Well, I think a lot of what you read the reports after their season ended, and obviously Daryl Sutter didn't exactly help the cause, but another thing that was really kind of coming out was a lot of dissension between teammates. Just judging off of the stuff that they were saying and some of the reports that were coming out, is that it was a very hostile work environment. And Daryl Sutter obviously didn't help the cause, obviously, but maybe it's a different story if you were to bring him here to New York. Another guy that we were thinking of, and this might actually be the best possible candidate in terms of X's and O's and kind of having somebody adjust to a more modern style NHL game, but has experience, is Andrew Burnett. Look at the way the Panthers were able to rebound after Quenneville
Yeah,
left or he was
yeah.
terminated. They were still a very dominant force. And there's one thing about the Florida Panthers organization is that they're very analytically driven. That organization understands analytics very well, but the issue is just having the issue of keeping the talent there and maybe kind of having some issues with, moving certain pieces and allowing him to really develop. But all in all, though, they know what to look for in terms of a player, and they had the right coach in Burnett. I was very surprised that they didn't keep him. I understand going to Paul Maurice, getting a more experienced guy would be a bit more of a, move for that clubhouse. But Andrew Burnett would be a good choice if he became available. Obviously, he's the assistant coach for the Devils right now. But I think if he was trying to get back into it and the Rangers wanted to move on from Gallant, I think a fresh face who he was a player, mind you, not that Gallant wasn't a player, he was with Detroit and Tampa Bay, but Burnett seems to fit a little bit more. He retired, at least in the last like 20 something years. So he would kind of fit more to the modern player than Gallant, who I don't want to call him a dinosaur, but retired and like it's not coming to me. I don't want to,
90s maybe.
yeah, early 90s, because he did play for Tampa Bay, so it had to be after like 94 or 95. So there's to be more of a connect with Brunette than Gallant in the sense, because he wouldn't be as much of a dinosaur
Mhm.
in that sense.
I think if with Drury the way he is, I don't know. This is just a gut feeling. Like the way he was kind of just thrust into the presidency and the being the general manager of the team, right? He's like he's young, Drury. So, and I've heard that he is a very like he's on board with the analytics, so
Oh,
doesn't hate
100%.
that. But look at who else comprises upper management. You have Glenn Sather still, and you have James Dolan. Like James Dolan just wants to win, right? And Glenn Sather, we'll call him a dinosaur because he is. I
Yeah.
mean, um, like he's obviously okay. I will say respectfully, he's one of the most accomplished executives in league history. Not taking that away from him, but it just seems like they go away from that stuff. And I think Drury understands that they need to start buying into that. It's like just a matter of convincing them
Right.
that that's the way they need to. Because like, look at some of the moves that he's made. Like Dryden Hunt, he brought in. That's a pretty specific player to bring in. Like
Hmm.
someone that didn't have a lot of playing time, but when he did, he was pretty effective at even strength over the past couple of years. But he also understands that something else needed to be done after the Tom Wilson thing, and that the locker room was missing a huge important element. So he traded for Ryan Reeves, and to kind of like complement both of those, he got Barclay Goodrow because he's wasn't the worst analytical player. He had like fairly decent stats with Tampa. Probably on that third line, probably the worst out of those three players between Coleman and Gord
Hmm.
and himself. But he did that because you know he needed to add a sandpaper element.
Right.
And not, like I don't hate Barclay Goodrow, right? Like I think he's a very good player. It sucks that he's making that much money because it's the same deal with Trouba. It sucks that he's making that much
Right.
money because there's no room to make other moves that the Rangers need to make. Like
Well, to
Lafreniere and Miller need contracts. You
right.
might be able to negotiate with them. You
Hmm.
might be able to get like a bridge deal that's team friendly,
Well,
but I'm not sure.
look at the steal that he was able to get Heedle for 4.5 for the next 4 years. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Mhm.
But to comment on the Goodrow contract, so you got a guy who gets you at least 12 goals, gets you about maybe 30 points, 25, 30 points a year, who penalty kills, can move up on a pinch, can play two positions, winger and center. The going rate for a guy like that is exactly what Barclay Goodrow makes. You're not going to find a guy who can put up similar numbers and get him for at least 3.6 or less, unless you have somebody in your organization who can do that. But more than likely, he's going to get paid, because that's what happens when a lot of players end up moving up and they get a decent amount of contract. They're going to look for the bag. You know, the only issue with the Goodrow contracts is it just came at it came at the right time and also the worst time, because it came at a time when the cap was very tight and there was the potential of it going up. And obviously, we can see with like the Mika move and even the Panarin move, the cap's going to go up incrementally every year. So those moves look a little bit less. And the same thing with the Trouba contract at the time. You look at some of the contracts that were given out to some of the players at the time, you're talking 9, 7, and they weren't even at Trouba's level at some point. So you're getting a guy who can provide you, good defense and tangibles for 8 and change. Not terrible. You can do that. It's just the unfortunate, the COVID pandemic didn't really do anybody favors, because I'm willing to bet that with the way the cap was going up in, 18 and 19, Gordon and at least Davidson at the time felt that those moves were instrumental, and they really are, because they're not terrible players by any means. Obviously, Panarin can improve in playoffs, but that's beside the point. Those moves were made to help bring the team to the next level, because at what point were they going to do it? I see a lot of people online saying, "Oh, they rushed to rebuild. They rushed to rebuild." Honestly, maybe they did to a degree, but at what point do you become complacent where you're just getting first round picks every year? You turn into Buffalo at some point. You turn into Arizona. Edmonton was like this for a very long time. So, at what point do you do that? So, in terms of contracts, the Rangers are going to need to find someone if they're going to move Goodrow in this cap crunch, which I think they will, unfortunately. You're going to have to find a guy to replace that. That's going to be tough to replace. Where do you find it, and what do you pay for it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I am a fan of Barbashev.
I do. I like him too. Rangers do
Barbashev,
have a couple of pieces they could. I'll tell you that for sure.
and don't forget they're gonna have to use Zach Jones next year.
Yes.
They're gonna have to use either him or Robertson or both next year, because they're not gonna have that much room to move with, like to work with. They're gonna keep Harper on there as like the 7th deep spot, and I know they don't like to do it, but Jones and Robertson might be your only 2 options. And I
Mhm.
was looking at the free agent class for defensemen
It's not
and
good.
trying to see, yeah, it's not good. The Rangers like big defensemen that hit. There's not like the options out there are not the greatest.
No.
They're just not.
But
Maybe
you
Michael Stone, but like I don't know. He's
but
not.
you really can't go wrong with a bottom pair of Schneider with the mix of Jones or Robertson or even Ben Harper. Say what you want about Ben Harper. The guy's not the greatest defenseman in the world, but the
No.
guy did step up for this team very admirably in the situations that he had.
Yeah,
I
he earned
would
that extension for
Yeah,
sure.
he earned it, and it's at league minimum.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with that. And
Right.
remember, you got VZ coming back at again like a penny. Eight.
850K. I mean,
That's
good
an
grief.
awesome deal there.
Right.
You're probably gonna bring up Brennan Othman, right? So there's another league minimum contract there. I past couple days I've been trying to do the math on the salary cap. It's gonna be really hard. Like don't even talk about Tarasenko. Like with what you have without trading Goudreau, it's gonna be cheap. It's gonna be
Yeah.
really, really tight. It's not like if you sign Lafreniere and Miller, let's say I think Evolving Hockey projected Miller at like 4.03, not 4.04, something like that, and Lafreniere at 2.94. That leaves you with $5 million in cap space
Mhm.
without moving what's it called? Goudreau. And
Mhm.
you still have to bring up Othman, you still have to bring up Jones or Robertson. You need a backup goalie, and you're missing like 3 or 4 other forwards there.
Mhm.
That's not anything. There's no room to work with. So I think somebody's gonna have to get traded here. Panarin won't move his no move. I don't think it's a good
No.
idea to trade Panarin.
No. I
Because,
mean,
like
do
you
I
said, who's getting you to the playoffs? If you trade Panarin, who is replacing him? Like if you trade Panarin, you almost automatically have to re-sign Tarasenko.
you have to. And maybe Patrick Kane at that point.
Yeah, because you can't just rely on Lafreniere, Kako, and Othman because they haven't proved that they could be 70, 80 point guys yet. They've only just now proved in 1 year that they could be 40, 40 point score, not even 50 points, 40 point scorers.
Mhm.
That's a lot to ask for a team that wants to get to the end and lift the Stanley Cup. That's a lot to ask.
Right. There's
So
only
I don't
two
think you should trade Panarin.
there's only two guys I would trade Panarin for. Elias Pettersson and Matthew Tkachuk. End of list.
I love those two. Wow, have you been listening to this show? Those are the two guys when the Rangers were going after Eichel. Those are the two guys that I wanted.
Yeah,
And I'm
I
like,
want
screw Eichel. I'm with Pedersen.
Yeah, I Elias Pettersson's my favorite non-Ranger, and he won me my fantasy hockey season this year. Shout out to EP.
Oh, good job, that dude. He's got
So
such a
he
nice
would
wrist shot.
he would be, I think, if they were to move on from Panarin, uh, you would probably get him for about $1 million less. So that allows you some flexibility in that sense, because it would be about, like, I think his qualifying offers like the expected offer he's going to get is about 10 mil, which is perfect, and he could play two positions too. So
Yeah,
why
center
not?
in the wing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
So
then Kachuk too is like everybody wants the sandpaper aspect of it, and I don't know why this wasn't a conversation like last year. Uh, that was the guy, man. That was the guy that you would have had to do it.
yeah,
Like you could have put. I know they got a first round pick in this year's draft for Niels Lundqvist, but you could have traded Lundqvist for that. You could have
yeah,
included him in the package for that. You could have included another defenseman. You could have included like you could have made that trade work. I think
yeah.
you could have made it
Well,
happen.
Panarin would have had to have gone the other way,
Yeah,
100%, if that were the case, because you can't the extension that he signed, you wouldn't be able to fit it.
yeah,
You would basically have to gut the rest of the team just to fit both of them, and ideally you'd want to do that, but I guess maybe they'll just go after Brady Tkachuk at some point if the Senators kind of fall apart, but
yeah. He
that's
just
beside the
he.
point.
I don't think that's gonna happen. They look really good.
Yeah, wishful
They look.
thinking, man.
I know. And he kind of just signed an extension,
Yeah,
didn't
he
he?
did. Yeah,
Yeah. So not really holding out hope for Brady Tkachuk,
right.
who's cheaper, but he's also the same type of player. But
He's also their captain
those
too.
players are few and far between.
Yep.
Everybody says they need to add the sandpaper aspect. They don't grow on trees. They don't make them like they do in the 90s.
Yep.
It's not apparent here anymore. It's Brad Marchand, Tom Wilson, who's not even as good as Brad Marchand, and then it's Matthew Tkachuk. Like those are the three
Mhm.
guys. You have to if you're gonna get a guy like that, you're gonna have to draft him and hope he plays that way.
Well, you would
And
hope Othman
actually,
becomes that guy.
I think one of Othman or Lafreniere can be absolutely be that guy because Lafreniere is. I remember when they drafted him. Every people were saying like this guy is not afraid to hit. Like
Nope.
he throws body.
Mhm.
He's good in the board on the boards. Like he's a pretty good forechecker. I've heard Othman's a great forechecker.
Phenomenal.
Like
Phenomenal.
you could develop if you have the right coaches. I think you could work something out there. And I know people be like, all right, Lafreniere's first overall pick. Why is he a role player? I don't care. Just make it work. You have your skill players on
That's
the
all you
team
need to
already.
do.
You don't need everybody to be a skill player.
And just to add to that, real quick, um, I understand that they haven't exactly put, Kako and Lafreniere haven't fulfilled their potential, but you have to understand also that those two have been thrown in situations that almost every other high-end draft pick have not faced
Mhm.
before. So let's look at Buffalo and Edmonton, for example. Jack Eichel, immediately throw him on the first line when he shows up. Connor McDavid, you're the franchise. First line center, power play minutes. You're showing him out everywhere. He's able to exercise all of his flaws on the ice without issue. That's not the case here with Lafreniere and Kako. You're basically asking two guys who were supposed to be the guys, and tell them, listen, you're going to put you here behind
Yeah, you're a support
Zibanejad,
player.
Kreider, and Panarin. It's just the only way you can rectify that is if you put them both in top six roles. But when it happened, when they picked them, you couldn't just say, okay, guys, well, we're trying to win. We got these prospects. We're also trying to win. So go ahead and do what you got to do. So I understand why people are upset. I wasn't a fan of it, but I understand why that their production hasn't been as similar as other players. I mean, it took what, 2 years from Lafreniere to get on the power play? I mean, he got his first power play point last season or this season that just ended. And he's
Got
been
his
in the
first
league for
goal
almost,
this season.
yeah, he's been in the league for what, almost 3 years now? Just about. So
Yep.
it's a very difficult situation, and as much as I'm very low on him right now, which I don't necessarily think he's going to get 2 mil in the market, by the way. I think he's going to get just about a mil and change. And it's kind of like a prove me deal, kind of, because no one's going to want to give him that kind of money for putting up 0 points in 7 games. Um, I think he, I think he'll be fine next year. And as much as I would trade him for a proven piece, I'm also not opposed to just letting him go out there and figuring it out. Because again, the skill just doesn't evaporate. He needs a skating
Mhm.
coach. I don't know what happened. I mean, he has the skating for juniors. He doesn't have NHL skating ability. He doesn't. Great
Perfect.
hands. He's
Yeah.
got a great shot. Put some little more size on him. I think he'll be okay.
This is a perfect segue to my final talking point, and this is from Steve Valiquette from the Garden Faithful podcast. I was listening yesterday, and he laid it out there for him. He said it as it was, and this is what he said. So Steve Valiquette on Alexis Lafreniere, he said, you know what he needs? He needs a summer in the gym. He needs to put his golf clubs in the closet, and he needs to dedicate everything he has to hockey. And then he'll know for himself what he is at this level next year.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to put the work in. He needs to put the work in. I don't think just giving him the ice time is going to be enough. Like he needs to show that he wants it more. And I said it a couple times yesterday too. Remember when Zibanejad had his first 30-goal season? I remember all Joe Micheletti was talking about, like as that season progressed, was how much time Zibanejad spent that summer
Right.
on the ice, training,
Mm-hmm.
working with coaches and stuff like that. That's what you need to do.
Yep.
That's how you take your step. And it's perfect because Zibanejad was once a top 5 pick, top 10 pick in his draft. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until like what, 7 years later that he was able to figure it out and put it all
Yep.
together.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a chance to do it quickly. Like you have guys that have been in that position before. Look at Kreider, Zibanejad. Panarin was an undrafted guy and worked his ass off to get to where he's at now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he has the tools. He's got to. I'm with you, man. Hire a
Yeah.
coach and work on your game in the off season.
Listen, if Barbara Underhill, she works for the Maple Leafs, by the way, but Barbara Underhill was the big name for when Brian Boyle had his skating coach, which is the reason why he elevated his game and was a mainstay in the Rangers runs. Worked with him for his skating. And mind you, he was a fourth line, third line grinder. Turned into one of everybody's favorite Rangers for those runs. If Brian Boyle can do it, I know Alexis Lafreniere can do it. At some point, something has to click into this kid's mind. He's 21 years old, just about 21. Something has to click into this kid's mind and say, I need to do something about myself. And that really goes with anything, really. Kako did it last summer going into this year. And it turns out he's one of the best possession drivers on this team. Give him more chances, the puck will go into the net
He's
more.
got to start finishing. If
That's
Kako
it.
could finish like a
That's
good
it.
75% of those chances, 50%,
Right.
he'd
And
be
it's
top
like
player.
that Bill Clement line in the old NHL video games. Finish, finish, finish. And I'm not talking about the country. So
Yeah, for real, for real. Definitely need to see some finishing from the Finn, Capo Caco, and the Canadian Lexi Lafreniere is definitely gotta work on skating this off season for sure. Everything,
mhm.
everything,
Yep.
everything. I'm sure Kako will do it again
Of
because I
course.
know he. If you heard those interviews, he said, "I want to play next year. I want more ice time and I want power play time."
Hmm.
It's like, all right, man.
He
Like
trains
I
with
hope I
he
hope you go
trains
out
with
and get it.
Mikko Rantanen in the offseason, and that's a player you want to be around. That's the perfect model for Kako. If we can even get somewhat like a Mikko Rantanen light for Kako, I'll take it.
People were saying Stone. Now we're saying Rantanen,
Yep.
like Mark Stone. I
Hmm.
I would take Mark Stone.
100%.
Rantanen, it would be great.
Yep.
Rantanen would be great. And if Lafreniere can just bump up his attributes, like all of his tools, take it to the next level, work on it. Don't take any time off during the off season, really. I know he's young or whatever. Maybe he doesn't get it yet, but like I hope he hears those comments that Valquette said because
It's now or
it's
never,
100% right.
at least
It's
with the Rangers.
about the
So,
effort, man. Like all their best players, they all at some point they did the same thing. They all did it,
hmm.
all of them. And
Oh
you
yeah.
go to years past too, they all did it. You mentioned Brian Boyle. I'm sure Zuccarello did the same thing,
Yep. Agreed.
right? Like
100%.
it's all a matter of realizing it. All right. Well, anyways, that wraps up Ice Cold Takes for this week. Johnluke, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me. I would love to come back whenever you'd like to have me. I
Yeah,
enjoyed this. This is great. And yeah, feel free to, go check us out at Blue Seat Blogs. We got a lot of good content on there. We got a lot of good analytically driven, but also level headed analysis on the Rangers. And I think Dave Shapiro has a lot of bad food takes at some point that'll come
Oh
out.
boy, I might have to get on him for that.
So, but yeah, thank you for having me. This is
Yeah, no
great.
problem. No problem. We'll have to talk about the Mets next time a little bit
Oh,
more on the show.
oh boy. Oh man, don't get me
Hopefully,
started on that.
they pick it up by the next time I have you on the show. Who
Yeah,
knows?
your mouth to God's ears. Ugh.
All right.